Welcome, everybody, to the Spiritual Pathways podcast. And Kelly and I are delighted to be joined by Adrian Incledon-Webber, the former Vice President of the British Society of Dowsers. He's a house healer, a spirit worker, and an empath. Adrian founded Dowsing Spirits in 2007 and has worked on hundreds of people's houses, clearing them of detrimental energies. His Heal Your Home books, which Kelly has here, has been described as the Bibles of geopathic stress. I really like this one as well. And Adrian has passed on his house healing techniques and skills to many other people over the years through his in-depth courses, encouraging many people to help themselves as well as others. Welcome, Adrian. It's so lovely to see you.
Thank you
And
for
to the
joining
two
us,
of you as well.
Adrian.
Thank you.
Adrian, how did you get into this?
I suppose it stems really from my estate agent's days. I had my own business for about 25, 26 years down around the Guildford, Godalming area down in Surrey. And it was kind of like a learning curve. And I think if I talk to Spirit now and just saying, look, why did you have to put me through that for 30 years? Why didn't you just tell me what I was going to be doing? And it would have saved an awful lot of heartache and upset and worry. But it was really walking into people's houses over, many different houses over the years, some that you'd feel very comfortable in, and they would sell very quickly. You could almost come back and just make one phone call and sell it. But there were others that you'd walk into and feel very uncomfortable. And then, obviously you'd go and walk around the house before you gave the valuation, and you suddenly, it's a family house. Obviously, the kids are living there as well. And then you suddenly find one toothbrush in the toothbrush holder and think, there's obviously a marriage split up that's happened, and you could just feel it in the house. And a lot of people, get lots of people around there, but they'd come back and say, look, the house ticks every box. It's great, but we just don't like it. We don't know why we don't like it, but we just don't like it. And so, of course, you'd report back to your client saying it ticks every box, but it's just not right for them. Can you find out why? Is it the kitchen? Is it the bathroom? Is it the decor? And I said, look, they just don't like it. And of course, I can look back now and know exactly the reason why they didn't like it. I think if I'd have known then what I know now, then a lot more houses would have been sold. And they'd probably lose it and they'd go to another estate agent and, it would gradually sell. But that's really what got me into this. But the classic one was the divorce house. There was one particular house just outside Godalming that came on the market. We were sort of just, I was 28, 29 when we got the business going, and my business partner. And this lady phoned us up who was trying to sell the house and said, look, it's just fallen through with one of the bigger agents in Godalming. We see you two very young lads. Can you come and value the house and put it on the market? Yeah. And it was a lovely house. You could sell one a week of these things. We put it on the market. They were getting divorced. We sold it very quickly. 2 years down the line, phone call to say, can you come and value the house for us? Yeah. What are you doing? Oh, we're splitting up. Okay. So put it on the market, sold it. 2 years down the line, the same house came back on again and again and again over almost 25, 26-year period. So that's really what got me into it, to look at, why that was happening. Yes, there was a lot of emotional stuff going on, but I wanted to try and find out if I could actually break that repeating pattern. Towards the end of the time it last came on the market, we were trying to sell the business, and it was a difficult time. The big money that was being made in the state agency back in the 80s had passed, and we'd obviously gone through a couple of recessions over that time and decided that, look, I just wanted out of it. I wanted to go and do hands-on healing, basically. And I was seeing a healer over in Ashvale called Andy Roberts, and he was kind of keeping me on the straight and narrow. And he said to me one day, he said, you're going to be doing some really big stuff by the end of the year. And this was kind of June. And I said, what sort of stuff? He said, you'll find out when the time's right. You think, I hate that expression, when the time's right, thinking, is it today? Is it tomorrow? Have I missed it? Was it last week? And gradually it came through that what I was going to be doing was sort of house healing work. And I suddenly thought, well, how do you do house healing work? And gradually it just, luckily upstairs, I think probably felt sorry for me or didn't want me walking the streets for the next few years. So said, oh, we'll make him busy. We're going to make him a house healer. We'll chuck him a few sprats and then we'll see how he gets on. So that's really how it all started.
It's funny, isn't it, how these, we don't intend to go on these pathways. They kind of happen to us.
Absolutely.
And that's really fascinating. But, when you were an estate agent, were you, obviously you were noticing the patterns of, disharmony in homes, we call those like sick homes. But were you also sensing as well?
Yeah.
Because I know obviously you do dowsing. We want to talk about that. But were you sensing and how were you sensing? Just
I think it's just that inner knowing, isn't it? Mum was always a very sensitive lady. My father wasn't. He was a fighter pilot and then another pilot. He just kind of was such a logical bloke. He couldn't quite work out what I was doing. But Mum was always a very sensitive lady. And I guess they call them generational gifts, don't they?
yes.
Or curses. I'm not really quite sure sometimes, depending on how you're feeling on the day. But yeah, you could walk in, you just got that sense something wasn't quite right. And I think that it is that you gradually learn to listen to that intuition. When you're younger, you're gung ho, and even though you're told, you know not to do something, you go ahead and do it anyway. And I guess that's the way we all kind of learn in life what to do and what not to do. But the more I was doing the estate agency, the more I wanted to get into healing of some sort. I've always wanted to do that for all my life, but
And were you already a dowser then, Adrian?
yeah, I started when I was about 7.
Oh, early starter.
Well, it was kind of weird. Well, I've always had a fascination, as probably most kids do, with buried treasure. And I think it was either one of my comics I used to have. We were living in Cyprus at the time with Dad in the Air Force. It was either my brother's comic or mine, and there was a treasure detector or sort of metal detector you could buy. So it was 2 and 6 or half a crown in those days, which is 12.5p now, I think. And so I sent away to
Anyway,
England, yeah, for this metal detector, and a pair of dowsing rods turned up. I was hoping for like a Second World War metal detector, one of these really big things. No. So a pair of dowsing rods turned up, and yeah, Mum used to go and hide a set of keys, and I'd go and find them, and underground pipes and whatever else. I didn't know anything about earth energies in those days, or ghosts or anything else. So it was just kind of that's how it started off. It wasn't until years later when Facebook was I guess in its heyday. I connected with a chap who used to live in Lavenham, a little village in Suffolk we lived in. And he said, "Oh, do you remember you taught me how to dowse?" No, that must have been when I was about 11 or 12.
oh,
And I kind of forgot about it really over lots of other. I was doing hot air ballooning for a living, and then became an antique dealer working for people up in the West End. So, dowsing kind of fell by the by. But it wasn't, I guess, probably until my late 20s, early 30s that I picked up a set of dowsing rods again and started working with them. Do I do much dowsing? I rarely ever use a dowsing rod now or a pendulum. It's very much, I just get the message coming through when I'm working on somebody's house. I look at them, I can pretty much see the lines on a house now, so I can draw that up pretty quickly, although I still like to pick up a dowsing rod every now and then. But I just find it's such a lovely thing for people to do. On a basic level, it's a super way of connecting to upstairs or the
yeah.
spiritual world. You can sit there and ask logical questions and get an answer through a dowsing rod or a pendulum to say it's either yes or no. So spiritually, it's a lovely way to start off. And then, the more you work with these things, it just gathers pace, doesn't it?
It's certainly dowsing, for some people, it really strengthens their psychic intuitive connection. And so
Yep.
they start dowsing and then suddenly they start knowing. And that's really interesting. For me, I was like the opposite way round.
Yeah.
And so I always have to do it backwards. But and I, I'm guessing, you do the same, even whatever you experience intuitively or
Yep.
psychically, you always verify them with the dowsing rods or the pendulum,
Yep.
just for good practice. But
It is. It's fascinating. I think, I was watching a television program the other night. What's it called? Expeditions Unknown, it's called. A guy over in the States does the sort of like a 40-minute documentary on what he's looking. He gets called in to look at the pyramids. And he finally had a dowser on there. Didn't come across very well.
Oh dear.
No, just obviously quite an old-fashioned dowser, and set up these machines, and no, it just didn't work very well. And I think that's the big problem with it all. Dowsing goes back, as we know, hundreds, if not thousands of years. And it's a tried and approved method of being able to ask questions from the universal library and get answers. I mean, there's no greater power than that, really, is there? But there's still a lot of people out there with blinkers on. And I think, we're now in the 21st century. We need to really move this on a bit of a pace compared to sort of looking back, say, 30, 40 years ago.
Adrian, can I ask you,
Mm.
for someone who doesn't know much about this, about what geopathic stress is? What do you do when you go into a house? What are you looking for here? Whether you've got the pendulum, your dowsing rods, or just sensing if there is a presence in the house?
Yeah, now in most cases, I don't go to people's houses. I used to in the early days, but because I work for people all over the world, I normally get a floor plan sent to me and details about the family and the address, and then basic work on a clean sheet of paper. Um, but when I used to go into people's houses, I could normally, as probably Kelly does as well, you walk in there, I'm fully protected. I just don't want to pick up any of their emotional junk that they've built up over the years. So I'm fully protected. But also because there's a lot of people that have been working with geopathic stress. We'll actually explain in a minute what it is. But they go to people's houses, and a lot of these people have died quite early deaths because they've been picking up on exactly the energies that the other people have been found in a very detrimental way, not being able to clear themselves or protect themselves, and then suddenly go down with all sorts of illnesses because the body's just gone into free fall. So geopathic stress, basically, if you look at geoempathic, it's basically sickness produced by Mother Earth. Now, I still look at it pretty much as sickness produced by human beings affecting Mother Earth. So if you've got an energy line or an underground water vein running through people's houses, a lot of the problems then tend to be through human emotion that's been developed elsewhere that flows through the energy line or the watercourse. But of course, you also do have vibrational levels to deal with. So let's say you're quite sensitive and you can pick up on a detrimental vibrational level from an underground water source or an energy line or even a spirit in the house. You've got to be able to deal with that vibration as well as helping clear the stream or the energy line of detrimental energy affecting that particular person. So it's kind of everybody will be affected in some ways over the years, but not everybody will be affected as badly as other people.
So is energy stored in the fabric of the bricks and mortar within these houses as well?
Absolutely. Well, in the case of divorce house, yeah, you could walk in and you could feel a house humming basically. So yes, that world, furniture world, you've got things like power artifacts. You go to say Oxfam and buy some secondhand clothing or pre-owned clothing. Yes, they've been steamed, they might have been cleaned before they're taken there, but there could still be a vibrational energy left behind by the person who last wore it. The same with a book. You buy a secondhand book, depending on what the book's about. If it's a particularly sad book or produces a lot of emotional levels in people, then suddenly that can have the same effect on the person who's reading it for the second time.
I know, you are interested in work with crystals as well,
Yeah,
and a lot of people, they buy crystals, and they just don't know again what to do with it. But
yeah,
in that process of that crystal coming to you, considering it might have been bought at a car boot sale,
sure.
it might have been next to someone's bed who was, passing away. But yeah, it's that need to clear. But you're saying about the geopathic stress,
Yeah,
and obviously, some of the energies that are actually quite toxic and detrimental for us. It really is like a negotiation and compromise, isn't it? Because some of those energies are actually very beneficial,
absolutely.
on a grand scale. But it's just about us living in harmony, trying to create that. But yeah.
Absolutely. I often get when I've produced a report for people, they're saying, well, that's a bit dark. I say, well, you are sort of asking me to pick out all the detrimental energies in the house. There are a couple of nice questions I ask, are there any good places to sit, meditate, and heal in the house? So there are a couple, but mainly, you're being asked to clear the detrimental stuff out of people's houses, which will include ghosts.
Have you got any examples of what you've come across, Adrian, with regard to being a Ghostbuster?
Being a Ghostbuster, well, if somebody said to me about sort of 30 years ago, this is what I'd be doing, working with ghosts, I'd have probably, you wouldn't have seen my heels for dust, but it's a major part of what you have to do when you're working on people's houses and working on people as well, because we can all be affected by these exterior presences, if you like. And I tend to find a lot of spirits. Really, I feel very desperately sorry for them because there's obviously a reason why they haven't gone through to the light. The classic case is, a mother dying at childbirth. The child survives, a mother stays behind to look after her. That was maybe 200 years ago that the child had grown up, had children of her own, died and gone to the light. But poor old mum is still hanging around trying to find her. So it's that sort of tragic tale that you can come across quite a lot. But you also do find spirits that can be quite malevolent is not the right word, but could be quite tricky or a little bit on the dark side. There was a lady phoned me up who used to live in Russia, and she'd come over to here to work with one of the embassies. And unfortunately, there was a rather nasty spirit came with her. And she couldn't sleep. She was having major problems at home. And I can't go into too much about what was going on, but he was not a particularly nice person. So when I work with spirits, I really try and find out, what age they were when they died, whether they're male or female, how they died, and what sort of person they were in real life. And he was a backwoodsman. Basically, he would be living in the forests of Russia, trap animals, sell their pelts, and make money that way. But unfortunately, he'd rather fallen in love with this rather nice young lady. And even though she didn't like him being around, he stuck with her. Any boyfriends were having problems. So once I found out what he was, I had to kind of organize a way of really trying to get him moved through to the light. He didn't want to go because he was quite happy with his other half. So what I basically organized is a Russian scene in front of him with a couple of big fir trees, which I needed to get him through, and just said to him, look, at the end of the day, mate, you're running out of cash here. You've got a very expensive lady you're looking after, so you really do need to actually go and sort out all the pelts, get those animals out the traps, go and sell them to have money to keep this young lady into the style she's become accustomed to. And you really kind of felt that he was listening. And I said, look, I know where all the traps are. Go through the trees in the middle here. You'll be fine. But I had two archangels, one on either side of the trees, kind of hidden behind the trees. As soon as he went through, it was kind of like, got him and took him through to the light because he wouldn't have gone through any other way.
So are some of your guides angels then that you work with then, Adrian?
Yeah, I think you've got to do that because, talking with Kelly over the years, that it's we tend to be the fact finder here on the planet. It's really us trying to find out as much as we possibly can about how to, what needs to be healed. And then you call in your guides, you call in the top guns, if you like, to come and do the healing work for you. So I would say to people, look, at the end of the time, we'll do as much healing as we possibly can, but it's really up to the powers that be to really do what is necessary and what they feel is right at that time.
It's a teamwork, isn't it? They
Yeah,
can't do it without us initiating it, but they need people like yourself and myself and others that can actually find it, sense it, and have the ability to really channel that energy, or and anchor that energy, so it makes a big difference.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
they
And
need
they
us
are,
as much as we need them.
yeah, and they're far more powerful than we will ever be. And they also know what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Us mere mortals think we know what needs to be done, but we need a bit of guidance from upstairs sometimes.
They see the bigger picture, don't they? And again, I think that's the thing, isn't it? For humans, we've naturally tend to have a bit of an agenda,
Yeah,
and by having the overseeing someone overseeing it on a much higher level, passing it on to them, just initiating that process is so
absolutely.
important. So
Yeah, very
I'm with
much so.
you.
Yeah,
We
definitely.
And how important is it to be in that loving space, to be that sort of pure sort of channel, as it were, to go in and work for the highest good, to hand it over like that?
It is, it's very difficult to say everybody comes from the heart. It'd love you to say that I do all the time, but I think you need to have kind of a split life in some ways, don't you? When my kids come up, we'll probably have a couple of pints at the local pub. But during the week, you're plugged into the spiritual stuff, and that's what you then do. So it can be a bit of a dichotomy at times, between, okay, having a normal life, which is what, Kelly and I do all the time, or to then have your physical life, or your life that other people would call normal. And it's just trying to get that balance sometimes. I've never achieved it yet and probably never will.
I've not achieved it either.
No, but I
It's a
keep
work in
working
progress.
towards it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like both,
I think you have to have, we are on this planet for a reason, we have to lead a human life. But the spiritual, if it's like a spirit leading a human life, or a human life leading a spiritual life, it's just getting that balance right. And it's hard. People often say, it must be great living a spiritual life. Well, it kind of is, but it's still very, very hard to do so.
Yeah, it's difficult to remain, trying to remain in your integrity and do the right thing. But of course, we still got to have these egos,
Yeah,
which are right pains in the bum,
they are.
but they do lead us into some great learning, actually.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really what life's all about, isn't it? The reason, with my two books, both very different. The first one had, I think, 29 questions to ask.
I noticed.
Yeah, and the second one's gone up to like 55 or probably 57 now. I've got a couple of new ones now that I work with. So, there's always something there to find.
And can I ask, because you've got 3 books that
Yep,
I'm aware of that you've published, and
yep,
actually you've been told that you're going to have 4.
I have. And I'm not quite sure what the fourth one's fully about
Oh,
yet.
I thought we was going to get a juicy nugget there, Adrian.
Do I would love to do healing with the elementals is one of the things that has come into mind. I've got to finish off my Tibet book first, because I was over in Tibet many years ago and did a kind of spiritual journey with a mate of mine. So that's one thing I would really like to get finished. But the trouble is, once you get known in this world for doing the work, and then you get recommended to people, you do get very, very busy. So it's really trying to find the time to, stop the physical, stop the spiritual stuff, and actually get on with doing something a little bit different. But the trouble is with writing a book, Kelly, it I love doing it, but you've really got to sit down and then concentrate on it for about sort of probably 4 or 5 months to do a book properly.
I think that's why I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, I know. It's that.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And you look
Yeah.
at a blank bit of paper and I think, oh, because I'm dyslexic, but I can manage it through upstairs, who do a bit of channeling work with me anyway. And I do read the book and thinking, how the hell did I put that down? Where did that come from?
It's a massive achievement. As I say, it's really good books. Just
Thank
getting
you.
all that information there is so helpful for so many people. That want to do this or learn a little bit about it.
Well, that's what had to be done because I wanted to write a book as a self-help book for people. And okay, some people come back to me and saying, "Oh, it's a bit complicated. I don't want to do it myself. Can you do it for me?" That's fine. But it gives people some of the tools. I've read so many books over the years. You get to the end and go, uh, I know exactly what's wrong with me, but blank page. What do I do? So I didn't want people to say, "Oh, that's great. Thanks for all the information you provided, but what do I now do? I know exactly what's wrong and the problems I'm facing, but how do I go about doing the healing work?" Well, you've got a big healing section in there to actually work with.
And people are getting so much more intuitive, aren't they? They're really, lots of people have prophesized about this time being, a time of awakening. It's like, well, come on, get the clock
Absolutely.
out, come on. Well, actually, that is happening. And so, the interest in things like dowsing and earth energies and in all kinds of healing modalities now is, we're quite cool, Adrian.
I know it's kind of weird, isn't
You
it,
know
really?
what I'm
I mean,
saying?
yeah, the trouble is, Kelly, living up in the Yorkshire Dales here, and I walk into the local pub and people say, "What do you do for a living?" And they go, everybody goes, "Oh my God, no, don't ask him, don't ask him." There's a few people in there sort of still talk to me about it, but generally, as long as you can talk about tractors and cattle and sheep, and you kind of you fit in quite well up here. But no, that's being that's generalising. But
You're talking to a Yorkshire girl, so
well, there we are. You know exactly what it's
kindred
like.
spirits.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Mum was from County Durham, so I'm half northern, and yeah, the rest is kind of North Devon, stroke Cornwall. Uh,
Adrian, if you
yes.
had a checklist for people to say, okay, if you're feeling like you've got headaches or feeling slightly unnerved, what do people look for that something might be in their home?
I think it can be a multitude of things. A lot of time it's mum worried about the kids, maybe not sleeping or seeing strange objects in their room. That's part of it. But then you can look at divorce, you can look at relationship problems, people just being very unhappy in the house, illnesses, things going wrong all the time. There's so many things that people will approach me for, and I'll look at it and go, yeah, I can do that, or this is what you need to do yourselves. Sometimes it's a quick clearing of the house rather than going too deep into it. But there is a multitude of things out there. But spirit can often be the start of it all.
And it's also what I find is a lot of my clients come to me first for personal reasons. And so, it's like doing one-to-one work. And then it's like, there's something not right here. There's something that, there's something, so you do again, the more soul deep work. And it's like, no, there's still something wrong there. And then you
Yeah,
look at home, you go, oh my God,
yeah, absolutely.
that's where it's all coming from.
Yeah, and
Um,
that is the problem. Of course, if you move into a house that somebody's just vacated, it doesn't matter how nice those people were and how lovely and tranquil the house feels. They're leaving all their old energy patterns, their vibrational energies behind, which over time, the divorce house, for instance, can start to affect people. Now, certain people in life are bulletproof and nothing will ever bother them. Then you get the sensitives and you walk in there and with a couple of years looking at it and going, I'm not sleeping, I'm getting night sweats, the kids are fractious, my teenage kids don't get on with each other, there's always arguments and strife in the house. So, it doesn't always need to be the fault of the family living there. It could be sort of the fact they're picking up on this old vibrational stuff that's been underlying for many years.
Yeah, a friend of mine actually had visions of people that had just passed come to her, and it was almost coming through the wall. And then she realised that she was next to a funeral parlour, and
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
and
yeah.
so she had to put like protection around. So
mm,
she did. So it's extraordinary, isn't it, how things can sort of bleed through. But
Yeah,
we go to hotels and guest houses and things like that. I
yep.
was looking at your website, Adrian, and you also deal with protecting people going to, sleeping in the beds of people think.
Absolutely. Yeah, but of course it is. If you look at it, and this is what I kind of find, I look at it as incredibly logical stuff now. But if somebody phoned me up, a client of mine said, "Your house is great, but I'm in a hotel for a couple of weeks whilst doing a course. I can't sleep." I go, "Okay, just give me a couple of minutes. I'll come back to you," and think, bed patterns. So if somebody's been in there the night before, they're upset, they're whatever, depressive, alcoholics, whatever it may be. They believe that vibrational essence behind them, and then a sensitive comes in, sleeps on the bed, and no wonder they can't get to sleep or have weird dreams. So it can happen in B&Bs, hotels, you name it. So I will always do a clearing of a room before I get into it. The quickest way of doing this, and I use it quite a lot when I'm going anywhere, whether it's to a local cafe or anywhere to go and eat. I call it an ultrafine mesh net of light and love. Now, it's like a trawler's net. So basically, if I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable somewhere and I've forgotten to do it, which you can easily do, thing is, leading a spiritual life, you can perhaps, I won't go in there because it doesn't feel very good. Well, get on with it. You've got to go and, you're meeting a friend for a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. So I always make sure that I do this. So it's like a trawler's net of light and love. And basically, you just pull it through a person if you're not happy with them, or pull it through the room you're staying in, or the room you're just about to have a cup of coffee in, just asking that anything that may be detrimental or inappropriate to the meeting or the cup of coffee or the beer, whatever, is just taken away and disposed of appropriately into the universe. It's a very quick way of being able to just do a clearing on a place. And you can then say, well, when I've gone, if anything needs to go back in that was beneficial for the owners, then please do so.
I like the idea of a vacuum cleaner. Now,
Yeah, that's another good. Yeah,
I don't like normal vacuum cleaners at all.
yeah,
They
yeah,
take a lot more effort to get around a house,
yeah,
but certainly creating a huge vacuum of white golden light,
yeah,
and again, very similar actually.
yeah.
But yeah, all these cleaning tools, eh?
Absolutely. And it's nice, when I finished working on a client's house, and, obviously when I'm doing the house, I'm working on the family as well. I always provide them with the tools to be able to keep it to the level that we've actually got it to.
You mentioned there, Adrian, about working with families.
Yeah.
Are toddlers and teenagers particularly susceptible to bringing in sort of complex energies? And are we looking at sort of malevolent presences as well?
You can. There's obviously some dark stuff out there. I'm not a great one for demons and all the other sort of words that people used, because I think a lot of this stuff is human created anyway. I don't think necessarily upstairs. No, let me just go back a second on that, because I read a book a long, long time ago and then talked to a really good palmist friend of mine many years ago. And he said, everybody keeps about this balance between light and dark. And he said, you can't. He said, because if everybody that suddenly started practicing the spiritual stuff, the healing work that we do, means that somebody's going to pick up on the dark side as well, you better not start doing the good stuff, because does that make any sense? So as soon as one person starts doing spiritual work and healing work, it means that somebody's going to it's going to go and join the dark side. You'd look at it and go, well, perhaps if I didn't do that, then they wouldn't do the dark stuff. So I better not do anything. So I don't think there's always that balance between light and dark. I think there always will be people who have problems in their lives, whether it's emotional problems, stuff that's happened to them as they've grown up, from a difficult background. But I really do feel with all of this that with families in particular, yes, babies born in hospital can often come back with attachments, other people's emotional energy that's stuck to them, whether it's the midwife that's, perhaps not a happy person, the doctor, the ward they were in, or the operating theatre they were in. There's always a lot of bad stuff around hospitals, as well as some good stuff. Teenagers, again, the angst, especially having gone through lockdown, there's 2 years of their life missing. And I do a lot of work with teenagers now, really trying to get rid of that angst and that upset and the fears that they all had. A lot of it was media driven at the time, to hopefully try and get them to lead a much more normal life. So yeah, that's part of working on the family as much as the house.
And going back to the light and dark bit, and again, you know, fear is you know, often the problem, isn't it? Because it's a lack of understanding
Sure.
what someone's dealing with. You know, it's like that unknown thing. But I see light and dark as one of the same pole. So they're just like, you know, here's dark or
Yeah.
black and here's white, and very much like hot and cold, you know, they coexist in that Tao. And yeah, I totally resonate with what you're saying, that your friend shared with you. But I think, you know, it's not the darkness that's the problem, it's the fear that's the problem.
Yeah, very
And
much so.
that's why, you know, doing the work that we're doing, actually, you know,
Yeah.
yourself and many others, you know, in spreading, you know, information that actually is beneficial to help
Yes.
people be empowered and educated. You
Yeah.
know, certainly, you know, it feels like, you know, our mission, I'm sure that is yours too. You know, it's you know, it's that gradual awakening of people recognizing that actually, you know, most of the stuff they think is bad or overwhelming is just their fear of it, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, it
You
is
know,
very much so. Yeah.
yeah.
I've just
Like,
qualified as a soul midwife, so I'm interested in you and Kelly working with the souls of the dead, those that have suddenly died or are just stuck. I just wanted to sort of wonder if you would both talk on that.
it's a fascinating subject, isn't it? And say it's one that I never thought I would ever be getting into. But I think if anybody's doing any house healing work, they've got to look at spirits first and foremost. Because, you know, to me, you're altering the vibrational energy of a house. So if you've got a spirit there that perhaps has lived in the house or lived in the house as a physical being and then passed away but hasn't gone to the light for whatever reason, just likes living in the house, you know, you've got to be able to talk to them on a one-to-one basis to be able to help them move through. So, you know, there's always going to be a slight vibrational upset with them being in there. So, you know, to me, once you start talking with them and communicating with them, you know, that's part of the technique in getting them moved through, isn't it? But they can come from any walk of life, and they can stay behind for any for many different reasons.
And sometimes, like you say, they, you know, they're attached to a place, they're attached to a person, you know, and they're lost and confused, or perhaps there's a fear because of, you know, their religious beliefs, or,
Yep.
you know, it's incredibly, you know, I'm sure you'll agree, it's incredibly humbling to be
Yes.
able to support that process.
Yep.
You know, it's very beautiful actually, and actually brings, you know, we don't like to think of our, you know, one day happening to us, but knowing what we know, you know, that it really is a beautiful release.
It is. Now, weirdly enough, I taught one of these courses further up north, up in Northumberland many years ago, and we did a soul rescue on everybody that was there because you're teaching people how to do this themselves. And one lady phoned me up a couple of weeks later and she said, "Can I have them back, please? The house is feeling so empty." I said, "No, you can't. No, you can attract a couple more if I know." Thinking, for heaven's sake, you know, what is wrong with you? You know, get a life. Yeah.
And do you
So,
actually see? Do you have visions? I mean, I know
no,
you see
Mm.
spirits, don't you?
Yeah, so years ago I lived in Holland and I come back and my mum and dad had moved. Now I'm presuming they didn't mean I didn't know where they were living, if you know what I mean. But
yeah.
they, you know, I was in Holland for 4 years. And anyway, and so when I come in, I thought, oh, you know, what's going on here? And I was aware of, you know, a female spirit there.
Mm,
And actually this female spirit had real big issues with men. And
yeah.
so very anti-men, don't know for what reasons. And I said something happened to my father. So he was watching TV and he felt his whole, it sounds like a bit of a crazy story, but he felt his shirt being pulled up around him and he felt like a cold breeze behind. I didn't know that there'd been an argument between him and my mum, and that the lady was quite fond of my mum, you know.
Oh, okay.
So there's, you know, so you get a little too much interference going on here. And I said, Mum, this isn't right. You know, there's something going on here. There is a
Yeah.
lady spirit. She goes, yeah, I know. I see her all the time. Like, for God's sake, I've spent my whole life.
Yeah, I
And
know.
and I had to say to my mum, she really, she has, her being here is not good. You've got to let her go.
Yeah.
So having that conversation with my mum, who was a mental health nurse and, Catholic, and, was
Yeah.
all very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the spirit, there was one time I said, yeah, I'd like to see the spirits that I'm moving through. And I rarely ever get nightmares, but I did that night. It was a bit like the classic, ghost walking on with his severed head hanging underneath his arm, with blood pouring all over the place. And I said, can I just go back on that? Can I not see the people I'm moving through, please? I'm aware of them when I walk into places. I'm normally aware that there's something there. And I think they become aware of us as well, Kelly, don't they?
Definitely.
Your light shines in a very different way, and I
Mm.
think you can start attracting these spirits towards you if you're not careful. So I would normally say, anything in there that needs to be moved? Yeah, there is. Okay. And often I've been in pubs. I don't visit pubs all the time, but they're
You should.
great places for spirits to be in, apart from the drink spirits. So you'd sit there, and I'd often used to get a tap on the shoulder, and I'd turn around and think, okay, right. So Addison's very used to me to disappearing off into the gents' toilets, sitting, on top of the toilet lid, just doing a quick soul rescue to make sure that all the spirits in the pub have actually moved through. And it happens an awful lot. But I do try and say, if I'm just doing a normal life, can I just not be bothered, please? I'm happy for them to sit in my front garden. They don't come into my house. They sit in my front garden, and I will do soul rescues sort of once or twice a week and move them through.
That's really interesting because that's what my teacher used to do.
Yeah.
I'd go around to his house and he'd write, right, we're going to do soul rescue, and they're all out there, they're all waiting. How
Yeah.
many are there? I'd have to douse how many there was. I was
Yeah.
like, do it. It's a good
Exactly.
practice.
And when you've been
Mm.
working in pubs, you've seen spirits, haven't you?
Yeah, so and I like a drink.
Yeah. Well,
Not gonna lie. On a
normally.
weekend, it's
Yeah.
a nice treat, and there is something really beautiful about old fashioned, old pubs.
Yeah.
And I know, in Yorkshire there's some wonderful old pubs, and
There are,
I'm
sadly.
yeah, and where I am in Tewkesbury, we've got some really, it's an old medieval town, and so, but yeah, I mean, we've had all kinds of experiences from seeing people just sat there, and obviously
Yep.
seeing people with attachments as well. And
Yes.
actually, what I find quite sort of like, it's not a pleasant thought to comprehend, think about, but actually, some people, when they have, this need or desire to do something, actually, that attachment, might be a spirit that's
Yep.
attached using
Absolutely.
that person.
Yep.
I'm sure you've, experienced that as well.
You do. You can just feel it, can't you?
Pubs.
And
Yeah.
sometimes you can see it as well. It's a bit like that little imp sitting on somebody's
Mm.
shoulder, and you just think, okay. And I think it then gets around to permission. With a lot, people will always ask me, do you seek people's permission before you do any work on them? And I say no. And they go, that's terrible. I always ask permission. And I said, who does the healing work? Is it you or is it upstairs?
Mm.
They go, well, obviously it's upstairs or whatever they want to call them, God or the universe or whatever. So I said, okay, that's great. So let's say, Helen, you've got one sitting on your shoulder. I want to do work on you, and they don't want that to happen. It
Mm.
doesn't matter how much I push it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I always say that, if it's the right thing to do, I've pointed it out, and I'd like to do a healing work or do a clearing work on that particular person. Is it okay for me to do so? Yeah, go ahead, do it.
Yeah.
So I don't ask permission, but I do in the way that I do my work. Everything is pretty much cleared to upstairs rather than me sitting here all omnipotent to go, yes, I can do all this, I can heal the world. No, upstairs does not want the world to be healed that quickly. Well, we'd be out of a job, wouldn't we?
We would, and this light and dark, we the dark is not to be feared, it's to be, learned and understood and respected, and
Yeah,
brought into some kind of balance and compatibility. It's
absolutely.
Kelly has blessed a few of my homes over the years,
You need to
haven't
stop
you?
moving, I'm telling you.
But I
Yes,
did
yeah,
live
yeah,
in
yeah.
an old police station in Tewkesbury, and my goodness, that was quite something to go in. And there were still the imprints of prisoners within there. And you did a really wonderful job of healing that house. And I remember you saying, well, you need to have more lively music in this area and
Yep.
quiet and peace. And it was a whole balancing of the energies. But you do see things all the time, and you did see people being dragged in,
Yeah.
didn't you?
And
And screaming into
and
the house.
hung
And
and tortured. Yeah.
and you, yeah, hung and tortured. That was quite
Mm.
something. You have been, both of you, to Guernsey. Do you want to talk
Oh,
about
yeah.
that?
Yeah.
For starters, isn't it beautiful?
It is. It's a great, great place, and yeah, I need to get back again this year sometime. It's
Yeah.
just trying to get there. You know, you either fly, which is difficult from here anyway, or you get the ferry across, and you know, every time you seem to take the ferry, it's like a tidal wave. You know,
It's
it's
mad,
all over
isn't
the
it?
place. Yeah,
But
yeah,
I know, so I've been there a few times, and I know you have as well.
yeah.
And I was, mostly known for crystals, and so I was doing crystal stuff, if I'm honest. But I did go to the old Guernsey Underground Hospital.
Yes.
I know you went there the year after me, or maybe it's the year before, I don't know. But and I know you did some energy work there, and a little bit like your home actually, but
Yeah.
far about a million times worse.
Yes.
It was horrendous, and I know that you took the Dowsers from Guernsey, who are, hello if you're watching, you're
Yep. Yeah.
amazing, and thank you for having us. How you found that.
I didn't. It's a difficult one because I'm fascinated by underground things like that anyway. So there's a fascination there, but also you walk in there not full of trepidation, but you know there's going to be
Yeah.
stuff to be done whilst you're there. And it wasn't there wasn't a sort of a bad air throughout the whole place because it's a massive complex.
Yeah.
But in certain rooms you'd walk into, and I'm thinking, well, I don't think I really want to go in there, but I will do some work before I leave. So it's that sort of that classic case of, you know, people being, you know, a prisoner will be doing the work, will die, and they'll probably sort of cement them up in the walls rather than take them out. So there was a lot of that Second World War stuff that needed to be sorted. Not just the people that died there, but also the emotional stuff of the occupying force.
And it was created, wasn't it, by the Germans built it, and they obviously, had slave labor do it,
Yep,
and horrific, something it took some like 2.5 years to build, and
yep,
the distress on, that island actually.
yes, yep,
But actually, the great thing about Guernsey is it's got some wonderful, interesting sacred sites, and it's such a small area, and yet there's
yep.
loads of them. So there's, and I think there's a lot of, thanks to you educating people over there as well. Again, a lot of people doing the work.
Do you do much work with sacred sites, going into nature to sort of be the pillars of peace and harmonize where you are?
Yeah, not as much as I used to, you know, weirdly enough, because I used to do a lot of this, you know, certainly when I lived down near Avebury, well, I was only about 5 miles from Avebury, so I was there pretty much most days. So there was a lot, certainly around Wiltshire, and it's probably got more sacred sites than any other county in the UK. But yeah, there's certainly some nice sites up here. But of course, a lot of the farmers up here, including my uncle, during the Second World War, they took all the opportunities to actually sort of bulldoze a lot of stone circles, standing stones, just to get rid of them so it didn't interrupt them ploughing fields for corn. So the sacred sites are still here, but if you like, long forgotten, they're just not visible anymore.
Do you have a favourite sacred site, Adrian, that,
Well, I
for
think
you?
Yeah, Avebury has to be pretty much top of the list, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But we've got a couple up here. We've got Thornborough henges, which are three henges, you know, they're on the shape of the Orion's belt, which are quite fascinating. The third one has been in private hands up until recently, and that's now joining again with the other two. Um, they're probably the two of the most fascinating ones that I've been to. But again, I do a lot of hill walking and mountain walking in Scotland, and often you come across, you know, individual standing stones around the place, and do some healing work there, because and also do some joining up of the I think the last time we did the Earth Energies weekend, I got people from all over, went over to bring little pebbles with them and trying to connect up all the sacred sites and all the sites they'd been to. So it's that sort of thing I like to do. But there are so many, aren't there? Just magical.
I just wanted to talk about the importance of water, our rivers, our
Yep.
bodies of water, which connect the earth energy to. There's a lot of work with Dr. Emoto, Veda Austin,
Yep.
talking about the sacredness and sentience of water. There are many people now doing river blessings,
Yes.
trying to change that. Just what's your view on all of that?
As many people can do it as possible. Fantastic news. For me, when I'm working on somebody's house, I look for things I call water veins, which are probably, if like, rivulets of water running under people's houses. That, again, as Veda Austin says, and Emoto as well, water holds emotion. So I tend to work on the small stuff to begin with, but when I do that, I will try and work on the whole water vein. It doesn't matter how many miles long it is. But as you do the healing work on one, two, three, or four water veins, it runs into becks, small streams. Streams run into rivers, rivers run into oceans. So, even if you're just doing one little stream at the back of your garden, it's going to have an effect on the rest of the planet. It takes time to do so, but it is fascinating work.
It's interesting, isn't it? How people are becoming aware that everything is consciousness, actually.
Of
And
course.
we are having this relationship constantly, with our home, which is an expression of us or can
Yep.
become an expression of us.
On that point with water, I had a tremendous flood in my house just at the point when we were selling it and
Typical.
literally exchanging contracts. And that very summed up the emotions that were pouring forth with regard to that. And you've had
I've
floods
had
as well.
I separated from a partner many, many years ago, and our house decided to flood overnight. The shower, neither of us were there, but the shower switched itself off and flooded. And anyway, as a result, we found out we had asbestos in the kitchen. So you can, yeah,
Yeah, great.
really.
Thanks
So on
very
another
much,
level,
guys.
it was kind of helpful to know, but it was a bit like, yeah.
Yeah,
But on that
absolutely.
note, to both of you, do you talk to the house spirits at all, the guardians of the land? Do you connect in with them to sort of
You
help?
have to. You have to. Kelly, I know we both do. You
Mm.
have to, because for me, when I'm doing a house healing, I would always connect with the guardian of the site or spirit of place just to get their approval,
Yeah.
because you're dealing with some sort of pretty hefty beings. And it's just nice to say, look, guys, this is what I'm doing. Is that okay? Yeah. Thank God somebody started to do it, because, it's been, when I first took over this place, it was beautiful and no houses and all these horrible things called people building things and just wrecking this. I said, well, look, we've all got to live somewhere, mate. Just hold your head up a bit or hold your foot up a wee bit. Let's just do some work on it all. Let's just try and cement the houses in place so that they become part of the land. But yes, you need to seek their approval. You need to work with the elementals to make sure they're happy, because you do get some disgruntled elementals in people's houses, which can cause floods. You just make sure they're all okay.
Fires.
And fires and all the other bits. They can bully your pets and all
Yes.
sorts of things. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, terrible. Yeah. Well, but it is, like you say, it's about compatibility, it's about harmony. And that's what healing is, really, isn't it? It's really, creating that natural flow of harmony,
yep,
trying to give everything that homeostasis,
absolutely. Yeah. And it is difficult to do sometimes, isn't it? Because with any house healing, sometimes it's like an overnight success and I get a phone call the next day, go, oh my God, it's wonderful. Other times it can take several months, or in some cases, a couple of years to get it exactly right for people, because it may have taken sort of several hundred years, or in their lifetime living in the house, maybe sort of 20 years to get to such a low ebb that they need help.
people often, they try all different areas to get help, and then end up coming going, can you help me?
Yeah, exactly. And so often it is though, Kelly, isn't it? People have to get to that low ebb.
Yeah.
They perhaps tried the mainstream medicine route, which you can't knock. We all need mainstream medicine every now and then. but it's almost that they've been spat out the other end and they're no better. Oh, who else can we try? I know that weird person down the road. He does kind of weird stuff. I'm not quite sure what he does, but let's give it a go and see what happens.
And also talking about the spirit of the place, sometimes, when you go to a sacred site or, someone's home even, that spirit of the place, I mean, it's always, the person that lives there is expecting you. But
Yes.
the spirit of the place might be a bit, not
Oh, yeah.
can be a little bit grumpy as well, and so like you were saying, again, advising, that actually, say I come in peace,
Yeah.
white flag.
Yes, it's almost like, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's a little bit like it. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
going to do anything that's bad. I'm going to hopefully help and support you and listen to you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the big thing. Whenever I move into a house, I always go and introduce myself to the elementals. When I walk around the woods at the back here, just introducing myself to say, look, I'm here, but I need your help.
And and last year, I was at your Earth Energies weekend, which was absolutely brilliant. And obviously, there's many, many great speakers. And you were talking about mycelium, weren't you?
That's it.
And we did some work with the trees outside, and it was fantastic. But you've got one this year. Would you like to share?
Yeah, it's trying to find. In fact, I wish I'd have known about Helen a bit sooner. I could have got you down to come and talk about soul midwifery because I have got one lady come to talk about it. Um, but it's just really, as it goes under the title Earth Energies, because I ran the Earth Energies group for the British Society of Dowsers for years. So it's really just trying to bring lots of interesting speakers, including Kelly, for the second year running. If you say she's got to come back next year, yeah, yeah, all right, all right, all right. So Kelly's back talking about numerology.
Hmm?
We've got the soul midwife. I'm talking about entanglements, illness trigger points, and creating new neural pathways in the brain. I'm still not quite sure what to do about it yet, but I need to sit down and actually put the
That's
presentation
amazing.
together. We've got a guy coming to talk about old stones, a guy called Andy Burnham, who's written an amazing book on stone circles, standing stones, sacred sites. I mean, it's a massive book. Who else have we've got? We've got another lady talking about Ayurveda, the science of life. Um, we've got Alan coming back this year to talk about iridology. So we've got about 8 different speakers over the weekend.
Wonderful.
And the thing I love about it is just the atmosphere. When I was there last year with you, everyone's just so happy, and there's a real community spirit actually. So whatever you've generated and co-created is a very special weekend.
Yeah,
And we'll, of course, have the details in the comments and the
thank you.
description here, so sort of promote it. And we look forward to that. I'm just interested, as an interfaith minister, how ceremony is important in your work too, because you also bless and harmonize businesses as well as people, as well as homes.
Absolutely. Because it's all interconnected, Helen, isn't it? It has to be. And I think it's just working with people, and I don't just stop at people's homes. If the wife will say, yeah, he's always grumpy when he comes home from work. Well, I'm not surprised. Look what's going on in the business. So I don't automatically work on the business for them, but there's always going to be part of that comes in. Because my last question is always, is there anything else detrimental for me to find that's affecting the family? And if I get a yes, then hence the reason why all the questions grew to 57 now, trying to get to that finite stage that you've got everything as well organized and as clear as you possibly can.
And as soul midwives, we're supported by using the sacred oils from the Myrafor tradition through Felicity Warner, and it goes right the way back to Mary Magdalene, working with them. And that's how we can work with the souls of the dead and move them on. Kelly, crystals, how can certain crystals help the healing of home? And do you use those sorts of tools as well?
Yeah, I use everything I possibly can. Whether it's sacred symbols, whether it's crystals, yeah, essences, whatever, whatever comes into my mind, I'll suddenly get this message, oh, he needs so and so, or she needs so and so. Fine, okay. Well, I'm just a mere mortal here, I'll go and do what I'm told to go and do. So, yeah, just I bring in as much as I can from the past. Even working, there was an amazing book called the 72 Names of God, written by a Jewish guy called Yehuda Berg. And somebody said to me, "Have you ever heard of it?" No, never heard of it. So I got the book. You can get them secondhand from Made Books, not expensive. And I used to be able, you could dial, there's about 72 things they go through. And I used to just really dial what page is it on? What little symbol does this person need to do an effective healing job on them? So I would actually then douse to see what the problem is and then sort of take a photograph of the symbol, put it onto a little disc I've got and leave it there. Just use anything I possibly can.
As simple as bringing the outside in. I remember Kelly saying, get some flowers from the garden,
Yep.
put it in this particular room. And it made such a difference. I often think that, because I work as a chaplain in hospitals now, and just if we're allowed to bring flowers or a plant in,
Yeah,
bring the outside in, how it would
absolutely.
help the
But I would
environment.
hasten to add, please ask the flowers.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
It's
exactly. Yeah.
all, it's about intention.
No, I don't want to go in there. Yeah. But I tend to work, as you probably see, I've got normally, I work with the elements anyway. So, earth, wind, fire, water, and ether. So I've got the plant at the back and I've got all the bits of fire with the candle going when I do my healing work. So I bring in as much of the elements that are surrounding us as I possibly can.
Do you
So
know much about Feng Shui? Have I said that right?
a little bit, it's to me, I've got friends of mine who practice it. And I remember one year I was doing a talk, and a friend said, "Don't you start knocking feng shui again, because I do." And I said, "I'm not knocking it, but I just find it quite complicated. I try and boil things down to make things as easy as I possibly can when doing the healing work. But I feel with feng shui, for me, it's very much of an Eastern philosophy, whereas I try and look at geomancy as like a sort of Western geomancy. So what affects people in the East doesn't necessarily affect people in the West as much. They try and get their buildings built in a certain direction. Well, unfortunately, because we haven't got much land left in the UK, houses are fixed all over the place. So feng shui to me, if somebody does it, that's great, and there's some great people I know who do it. But to me, it's too complicated. My brain doesn't work that way.
And like you say, it's also important just to listen, isn't it, to the
Yeah,
space? What does it
absolutely.
need? What does the energy need? That I think Feng Shui is brilliant, but
Yep.
I'm not trained in it. I've dabbled, but I think ultimately, the place knows, there is like you say, there is a higher understanding of what's necessary.
Yeah.
And if we continue to use prescriptive techniques, then we don't actually break through to new learning. So I think our ancestors, my personal feeling is, they're much more, and in connection with, that spirit, basically, whatever you feel like, of whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
And it's really sort of having that connection. So in crystal healing, a lot of people work with crystals very prescriptively. And the first thing I say to my students is, those are all really great books.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Really great, but now I want you to put them away. You know what I mean? Because
Yep.
you have to learn how to connect. And then, but yeah, I think Feng Shui is brilliant, though. I really do.
It is, and I've
And
looked at various books and talked to people about it, and it's fascinating and it works.
mm,
But I just like less complicated stuff.
me too.
I can't do complicated. I've never been able to do complicated.
If you were sort of looking ahead to our golden future, what
Hmm.
advice would you give to the builders of our hospitals, the builders that that make these houses? Should they be more in tune with the earth energies about the water course and where things are placed so healing actually takes place and there's more balance?
It would be nice if we had the space, Helen. I think the difficulty is with all of this. They're developing a lot of brownfield sites these days because it's easier to get planning permission on. You don't know what was there in the past. There was one housing estate that we were selling when I was down in Godalming, and it had actually been built on an old garage site. Now, I won't tell you the village because I'll probably be sort of hauled over the coals for it. But I know full well that there were old batteries buried underneath. car oil, all the oil from the cars have just chucked over the ground. The ground wasn't cleared properly. So I know people are still having problems there today. Even I've done work on several of the houses down there. But what's happened in the past, unless it's been cleansed properly, you're going to have problems. But what I would suggest is talking to somebody like Kelly and getting crystal grids mapped out for people's houses. And I've done that several times. And again, a bit like you, I would either douse and say, right, what needs to go? But perhaps somebody would say, well, amethyst's always good for the
Mm.
entrance of a house. Well, is it necessarily the right one for this house? No. Okay, well, let's go for something else.
Mm.
So I would always then try and put a crystal grid around a brand new house for people. But can you imagine going to a builder and saying, this is what you need to do, guys?
Oh. Yeah, a few funny looks. And crystals are fantastic. Like you say, crystal grids are brilliant because obviously they have their own inner geometry
Yep,
and they amplify their energy field actually has that informational field. And the internal bonding of the structure is so strong, it can hold things, like you say, programs and
yep.
intentions very, very well. And again, I must hasten to add with crystals is that we do have a relationship with them. It's not like you're doing this,
No,
like the
absolutely.
flowers that go, no.
Yeah, I know, I know, I know. But I
They
think
want to
people,
be here.
Yeah, they
yeah,
want it to be. But,
yeah. But I think
crystals,
often people don't understand what their actions are going to produce
no.
sometimes. And I think, as you're right with crystals, and whenever I get one, which you can see there's a few around behind me, I always apologize to them. Just to say, well, because they were kind of lovely nestled in the ground, enjoying themselves and helping the
Yeah,
earth. Then somebody comes, digs them up, smashes them to pieces, dips them in acid for hours or tumbles them.
yeah.
And these poor little devils, they come to you, go, oh my God, oh my God. So I always apologize to them and just say, right, okay, let's get the relationship going here, guys.
See, I have a different understanding of that. So for me, I feel that, again, I think it's really important to source ethically, because a lot of crystals, obviously, not only can it be detrimental to the environment, it can be, involve labor. I will say though that a lot of crystals, like most mining is industrial mining.
Yeah,
And crystals tend to be what we call slag. It's not a great word, but it's like it's like it's a byproduct
yep.
and people come along afterwards, but certainly ethically sourcing. But I having worked with crystals for years, I find that some
Mm.
crystals are actually waiting for you.
Okay,
um,
yeah,
and
that's
that's
a good
really
point.
interesting, and that's a really interesting concept, and again, crystals have a soul consciousness basically as well, and so there's an oversoul element, and so as much as they're not actually, again, it's very controversial, but they're not. So whilst we maintain that they have been physically disconnected, actually, having millions and billions of years of Mother Earth presence, which is the greater oversoul, if you even imagine,
Sure. Yep, yep.
actually there's this knowing that they're still connected, and also no pain body, but certainly they are. There was a book called and it's called Love is in the Earth, and it was written
Okay.
by Melody, and it's like, for years it was like the Bible of crystal healing. Again, prescriptive, this crystal does this crystal does that, and but the name of it is really, really always stuck out to me because love is in the earth, and
Yep,
love is in the trees,
yep.
and actually they have and I think they're wiser than us. That's what I'm getting
Absolutely.
to. I think they're wiser than
Yeah,
us.
100%. I would agree with that. Absolutely.
There's something they know that we've forgotten,
Yep.
and trust in this process of
Yeah.
separation, and yeah, it's fascinating, yeah.
I see some Tibetan bowls in the background as well. Do you use sound in some of these healing
Mm,
practices, or do you
absolutely.
tone with your voice at all?
No, my voice is terrible.
That was a good
No,
one.
it was that no. I'm more than happy to put on some Tibetan chanting, which is a great way of clearing the house.
And if you had any advice to your younger self, say at 7 years old when you had your pendulum dowsing,
Yeah,
what would you say? What advice would you give
I
yourself?
don't think I would have probably changed anything in my life. I mean, that sounds weird, doesn't it? But everything that I've done has led me to doing what I'm doing today. all the good bits, the bad bits, the fun, the not so much fun. I think everything that I've done, whether it was antiques, even when I was doing antiques, I suddenly thought I'd love to be able to invent a machine that I could put on that 17th century dining table and see what it's gone through. And of course, dowsing rods will do that for you. Just ask the question. So I've always been searching for something, and I've always been really very keen on the healing side of life. So I would say probably don't change a thing. You can get hold of me through the website quite easily. There's a link there. I try to answer all my emails personally, so if anybody does send an email through, just give me a couple of days. Talks wise, I've got a talk down in Surrey on the 9th of March. I think the 14th of April, I'm doing a talk for Slimbridge Dowsers, so a little bit further south from Gloucester. Then I'm down to Devon Dowsers for a one-day workshop.
And of course, we want to recommend your books once again. Number
Thank
2,
you.
the extended volume.
That's it.
This one,
The first
Yep.
volume.
The first one.
Your home.
double the size.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And this one as well, which is a
Spirit
beautiful
Earth.
book that I know.
I love that book. It was co-written with a mentor, Michael Tim Walter. We were teaching Spirit and Earth courses, and we'd written so much material, we decided to put it in a book.
It's brilliant.
And yeah, I love it. It's hopefully quite simple enough that I can understand it, put it that way. But I think it's trying to lay out how to live a more spiritual way of life in the most simple terms you possibly can.
Wow, Adrian, I've absolutely loved meeting you, talking to you. I'm sure the audience are still like wanting to ask loads of questions. So if they do put things in the comments, I know you're really busy, but hopefully we will reply. Adrian will reply, and we'll give you website details and everything else.
That's really kind. And it's just been great seeing you both.